Hello, everyone. You're watching Let's Talk About Prepping. I'm Tyler, your host. And in this video, I want to chat about something that is almost universally encountered on the online prepping and survivalist community, and that is the hazy definitions of certain terms between pretty much everyone online here. Whether it's bug out bag, SHTF, the end of the world as we know it, these terms that we all use are only loosely defined between each of us and actually are so varied in their actual definitions between everybody online that if you get a chat room or a live chat of people, enough people together, and you say a term like SHTF or bug out bag, you're going to get hundreds of different interpretations of what that term means. And that really begins to be more and more obvious the more in depth you try to address those topics. So, one of the series that I've always meant to get back to that I started way back near the beginning of my channel is uh, prepper terminology, just looking at the terms that we use in this community and asking ourselves what they really mean to each of us and trying to maybe pan out flesh out a better idea of what those terms mean and maybe get a little bit better communication out of it and a little bit more of a clear idea at the individual level about what those terms and those ideas should mean for us. Um, it doesn't serve our community to have uh, a conversation about SHTFs when to some people that simply means wildfires in their area, and to other people that means a complete breakdown of society and constant violence. And these are two very different things. And so, while we don't need to get too crazy about trying to define things, I do think that it definitely doesn't help to have everybody trying to push their own definition of it. Everybody, um, hello, Hooples. I figured you might drop in here talking about terminology and how it doesn't help to have everybody having their own definitions for different things or arguing about what they mean. Um, Multiple times lately, I've been in live streams where people were arguing over the definition um, of bug out bag or SHTF or bugging out. And the hazy definitions of these terms lead to a lot of miscommunication and redundant conversations where everybody keeps arguing over what each term should mean or whether or not it's a legitimate idea. Um, I think the only reason some of these things, like the idea of bugging out, uh, there are a few of us who disagree strongly with the common conception of bugging out. But that's not because that idea is wrong, it's because the common conception of it has become so distorted over time that it doesn't mean what it should mean if it's going to make sense. Yeah, and it doesn't help that many people are just nuts. Mostly it bugs me when people either try to say that a whole group of terms are all the same thing or that there's no reason to have these different terms. Um, I think that there's if you have different bags, like a bug out bag or an inch bag or a go bag or a Civil War bag or whatever different bags people have, if they have different things that are codified by the name of that bag, then sure, have your different bags. Whether or not it's necessary to have those different separate bags is a matter of debate. But the gun nut bug out bag, yes, tactical bug out bags definitely are usually too heavy to be very feasible. But even other terms like SHTF or collapse or different things, especially SHTF, and especially to people who haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about the realities and the different severities and just the complexity of human real world situations. Um, these terms all often evoke almost fantastical ideas and situations for most people. Um, if I say SHTF, that could mean I've heard some people say that losing a job could be an SHTF. And I mean, yes, in all fairness, it could be in the most vague sense of that term. Um, but if the shit hits the fan for you because you lose your job, then you have set your life up in a very precarious position to have just things going wrong all around you, just having everything collapse in an utterly chaotic fashion just because you lost your job. That should not cause an SHTF, even just for you and your local world. That should be a sad day or an inconvenience or a sign that you're going to have to tighten the belt a lot until you replace that job. But I would not even say that the Californian wildfires are an SHTF. In fact, I would say that that's an expected part of life. Um, Definitely a challenge, definitely something to have to deal with in a natural disaster emergency, but not an SHTF. Uh, and so I'm not going to get into what I would say the different definitions for each of these things are, but and I'll get to you hooples. Uh, but I'm just trying to make my point for anybody doing the rewatch that we can call different things SHTFs or we can call different things whatever, but um, I think for one thing, it just really requires more clear and concise thinking on the part of individuals. But I think it would definitely help, maybe even to do a series of VRs, get people talking about what these terms really mean to them. To me, SHTF is definitely a domino effect, all encompassing collapse type situation. Um, and we'll probably need to end up really looking at how different types of situations of different severity are rated by different organizations to really get a way to define what different situations are compared to each other. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Global SHTF, I mean, there could very well be a localized American SHTF. And by that, I mean Canadian, American, Mexican, just the whole American continent, or a European continent SHTF. It is still possible for things to be isolated. As much as the American continent likes to think that the world relies on us, I do believe that if America were to just completely collapse in onto itself, while it would be a challenging situation for the rest of the world, I think it's possible that they would find a way to limp on while we sat over here and figured our stuff out. But that would be different from a global SHTF, or maybe just an SHTF where one side of the world gets EMP'd and the rest of the world limps on. Um, yeah. Anyways, what bags do I have and what do I call them? Well, I have my EDC bag, which is just a tool bag. As you can see, just have stuff, just all my stuff in there. Oh, that's got to go. But yeah, no pet news, Brandon. No. Anyways, I've got my EDC bag. I've got my car bag, which I've shared before, which is my bailout bag or get home bag. And usually in my car is my bug out bag, which I've also shared, the hiking backpack stuff full of things. Beyond that, I just have bug out bags that I've made for my family. But in my mind, there are different types of bags and different definitions of bags that are worth having. For one thing, I think one that is unfairly pooed upon by yourself, Hoobles, is the inch bag. Not unfairly. I believe that it is correct to deride the fact that so many people think they need an inch bag. Oh yeah, you've definitely pooed on the inch bag. But it's for a good reason. Most people do not need an inch bag because they'll die if they try to use it. And that may well include myself. But a lot of the time when people come down on the idea of the inch bag, and I'm not saying this is you in particular, is because they're conflating the idea of the inch bag and the bug out bag. And basically saying that the bugging out is the same as the inch. Which it isn't. Bugging out is, if you're doing it right, bugging out to a bug out location. Hold nothing bag. What's the hold nothing bag there, Hooples? But the inch bag is the bag that you have at your bug out location where you are going into the woods, never coming back. You don't know where you're going to end up, but you're probably going to need to cut down trees and build a house there and stuff like that, and last for at least a couple years. And that's pretty much death. I'm never coming home bag. Yeah. Which is different from a bug out bag, because a bug out bag, you're just moving to your other home under dangerous situations. It's a hazardous relocation bag. The I'm never coming home bag is the I'm going to go Jeremiah Johnson into the woods and just kill animals and build a house out there and maybe never come back and see anybody ever again. Now, the crazy part about that is, for most people, that's maybe a year tops. Get there bag. Yep. Exactly. So a bug out bag and an inch bag are different, because with a bug out bag, it's more or less a hiking backpack. It's got everything that you need at any given moment to be able to hike to a different location where you'll have stuff along the way, or at least there, everything that you could need, basically, under an ideal situation. If you're not bugging out to a location, then I would argue that it's a refugee bag. But that alone is different from an inch bag. An inch bag is, I have put things in this bag that will give me the best chance of providing myself into the future, an uncertain future, no matter what it may bring, whether that's in the wilderness or among people. This bag is going to give me the tools to restart anew with no other inputs, which is usually near impossible, and isn't usually what people are making when they say they're making an inch bag. 1 week in the winter, refugee if you are lucky. But that's the thing, is the fact that so often you don't hear the word refugee bag, the fact that it's always a bug out bag or a go kit or a boogaloo bag or whatever, um, shows you that there's only hazy thinking going into the process. They've watched all the YouTube videos about what goes into a bug out bag. They fine tuned it for their own preferences, and they're regurgitating it back out. Get out of Dodge bag, on and on it goes. Exactly. But it is more or less just a reconceptualization of what they've heard everybody else saying. Occasionally you'll get people who are really looking at their situation and going, oh, this is what I would want. This is what I would need to have. People like Steve, of course, they're trainers who have evacuated with kids enough times and been sitting in campgrounds and parking lots and hotel parking lots or whatever, who are capable of remembering the things that they wish they had had last time around. Well, there's only so much. I mean, the same information, if it's correct, it's going to be regurgitation. We're all guilty of it. It's just the way that it's done. But at the same time, there's a difference between regurgitating information and putting a new spin or your own unique analysis on it, and actually putting yourself in depth on what it will be like for you. The unique mental simulation of what that will be like. That doesn't actually occur for a lot of people. They have a mental fantasy of what they want it to be like, but unless you're able to really envision and put yourself in the shoes of yourself in that imagined future situation, and actually make it subjective rather than objective, you're going to have these mental fallacies that come with just sort of looking at the surface aspects of something. And most of the channels that I respect are the kind of people who are looking at things subjectively rather than objectively. And I would say that you do in a lot of the stuff that I see that I appreciate from you. Do look at it from a more subjective point of view. But you can tell when someone goes, I've got my fire taken care of because I have this. There's a difference between that and I will use this by doing this. And when they relate a skill or something, how they've done it in the past, how they plan to do it, there's a big difference between here's this box being checked and when they reveal the multiple layers of something, an aspect of their bag. It's the depth of the preparedness, if you will. Exactly, Hoopables. That too. You really don't hear a lot of people who have a bug out bag. They're talking about, oh, do you have a way to cook your food when you're getting from point A to point B? That's the extent of the conversation. Not necessarily, do you need to even eat in a 24-hour period? I mean, obviously, your energy level will benefit from it, but people are capable of, I mean, if all you have is food that needs to be cooked to be eaten, in a lot of emergency situations, you may be better off going without, if that means stopping and setting up and collecting firewood and lighting a fire and drawing attention to yourself. And all you need to do is walk quietly on the outskirts of town to get to your home, then it would maybe be foolish to stop and try to do that. But you'd be far better off in a bug out or get home bag ditching all of any food collection or fire preparation materials for just a bunch of protein bars or whatever else that you can eat on the go and never stop. I mean, I know it's a real bummer to think about walking for 18 hours without stopping more than 30 minutes at a time, but that would be the reality of a bug out situation. That's not very comfortable, but it's the far more realistic than just sort of imagining. First, I walked in one day, 20 miles. For Boy Scouts, we did the 50-mile hike merit badge. And to prepare for that, we did a series of 10-mile hikes, a 15-mile hike, and a 20-mile hike. And then on the week of, we did two 10s, a 15, a 15, and a 10. Or maybe we just did 5 10s. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're conditioned for it, it's not that bad. I don't think that any of our troop, by the time we were, conditioned up for it, really had any problem with the 20-mile hike. Hey, Mike Roch, how you doing? I had some pretty dedicated scout leaders, so I was only just a little bit shy of getting my Eagle Scout. That's cute. Well, Mike Roch, ideally we're prepping for anything and everything. In reality, probably not very much. "35 kilometers, that'd be about, what, 30 miles? $25? Really? Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I'm not very good with it. I need to. It's actually on my list of goals is to get around to learning metric to imperial conversions. I love camping. In fact, it's one of my stronger goals of 2020 to camp far more or at all compared to what I've been doing in the past few years. West Wind's in the house. How you doing, Wayne? How about you, Mike? You go camping? One of my goals for the channel is to do bushcraft, outdoorsman type stuff, but not just your general bushcraft type stuff, but actual prepper bushcraft, looking at how preppers need to be looking at bushcraft and looking at the woods. It is not realistic for most preppers to consider bushcraft and bugging out into the woods to be a very reasonable response to most situations. To me, you are more likely to end up needing to survive in the woods when your plane goes down and you survive hatchet style than, something happens and you have to bug out to the hills. But if you do find yourself driving through the wilderness to go visit grandma for Christmas and your car breaks down and for some reason someone isn't driving right behind you or within an hour of your breakdown, maybe you'll end up needing to be in the camping in the trees. Oh, yep. Well, thanks for dropping in, Wayne. Fun school. Yep. I'll probably be getting up early, but maybe not. We'll see. Yes, no collapse yet, Hooples. Thankfully. Well, Hooples, I mean, what's your time frame for surviving in the forest? Because the person can definitely survive in the forest for a while. Oh yeah, thanks, Hooples. Yes, education is definitely a good thing. Yes, and as Wayne pointed out, depending on who you're getting that education from. Well, Hooples, if you carry seeds with you everywhere you go, you can start growing sprouts. That's pretty sustainable wilderness survival right there. That's actually something that I've wondered before, why you don't see more sprout seeds and little sprouting trays and bug out bags. That should definitely be a part of a serious bug out or inch bag, but you actually don't see it. Uh, but a person is able to grow sprouts on their backpack as they walk. That's true, Hooples. But it bugs me that people don't at least talk about it, trying to create some way to form agriculture, essentially. I think you can grow sprouts pretty much anywhere you're getting a little bit of sunlight, can't you? Oh no, Wayne. Just make up some kind of BS professor title. I can't think of anything right now, but just something from a movie. Professor of extraterrestrial biology or something like that. Make them scratch their head and walk away. You're a life coach. Yeah, that's definitely why I say that for the vast majority of people, the inch bag is suicide. But it is a real thing. And I've heard people saying that a bug out bag and a get home bag and an inch bag are all the same thing, that people just, want to give different names to. But if you're doing it right, they each have a very different purpose. But basically, I want to at least try to get a little bit of clear definition of different prepper terminology. Yeah, potatoes don't grow where I'm at. I mean, potatoes do grow, but I'm not in the potato growing part of Idaho. Yeah, and like Wayne said, population density is one of the greatest threats. Um, Definitely need to know how much food your area can grow and how many people can survive off of that food and how many people are living where that food is grown. And I'll admit, I don't have an inch bag. I mean, there are things that I would grab, but I have not gotten around to that yet. My bag is definitely geared more towards sustainability than most bug out bags. That's why I call it a gabanch bag, because it's a get home, bug out, and maybe never come home bag. Most bug out bags are essentially a glorified hiking backpack meant for camping for a few days, and that's all that they should be. So if you do think that maybe you won't be able to go to an end location, you might get stuck out uh, hanging out in the wind. Uh, it'd be good to have a fortified bug out bag. Yeah, Wayne, a lot of our camping gear is in totes, and I got my get home bag in my car and a bug out plus bag in the car. Rest of the family's bug out bags, if you will, are in the garage. And yeah, there are quite a few situations in which speed would be critical. But yeah, in a lot of situations, you won't want to be hanging around, and you might have a small window where the roads are not completely messed up to at least make a little bit of time. But then again, if you're in that big of a hurry, it might be best to reconsider your situation. Yeah, I don't think that a lot of people appreciate how long it might end up taking to travel a certain distance, hooples. Usually you hear some very optimistic estimates, people saying that they'll definitely be able to cover 20 miles in a day and stuff like that. And while I know that I can cover 20 miles in a day at a pretty leisurely, scout pace, sort of stopping and hanging out and doing things like that, um, I also realize that there are multiple circumstances that could make that same distance take much, much longer. Yeah, and I think that in most situations, especially uh, with people who are not already conditioned for the 20-mile hikes with gear on, uh, that you're going to be looking at just a few miles a day. I mean, the majority of people, a lot of the people on YouTube who are saying that they'll be doing, good distance, they're in no shape to be doing that. Um, that's part of the reason why I want fitness challenges to be part of 2020, not necessarily to make people feel bad if they can't do it, but I think that if people are really, especially channels, if they're talking about doing that kind of stuff, they really need to be putting their feet where their mouth is, something like that. If on paved roads without kids and not facing gangs. Yeah, I mean, if you're or on like you know trail roads or maintained trails. Exactly, Hooples. Most people romanticize their abilities. Until I've gotten out there, engaged myself with a decent pack on, I don't even want to estimate how much I can do in a day. I'd like to say that I could go out there and do 10 miles in a day with a 25-pound pack, but that would be asking quite a bit, and I would definitely be hurting. Only at night. Yeah, I definitely want to do some bug outs maybe this year. Desert Pioneers in the house. How you doing? Not much. We're just talking about terms that are commonly uh, miscommunicated in the prepper community. How things like SHTF and end of the world as we know it and rule without law and things like that are often misunderstood between different people, leading to miscommunication. You just combobulated High Desert Pioneer? Why is that? Do a minimal one and then one with what you think you would take on the bug out. That sounds good. Tiatwaki. That's cool, Wayne. I'll go check those out again. I remember them passing by, but sometimes I end up listening to videos half the time, so I don't always get everything out of them. Tiatwaki is just sort of a catch-all term that pretty much means whatever you want it to mean, as long as it's an end of the world as we know it. That's funny about the Vaseline. I think I did. Maybe I didn't do a video all the while back, but I once met a guy who was passing through my area, and he was doing a cross country unicycle ride. He was riding a unicycle across the entire United States. And I asked him what the single most important item that he thought a person needed when they were doing a unicycle ride across the United States and camping out under the stars and staying on couches and in hotels and things like that. And he said Vaseline was the most important thing. Yeah, I believe that those two conditions will likely lead a person to always have Vaseline with them. One of those sounds worse than the other, I'm going to be honest with you. Yes, I've heard about the nipple band-aids, which seems like a word that should get me demonetized if I was ever monetized. Hmm, interesting. The mother of all boots. But yes, I agree. Shoes are probably the most important thing that a person can have preparedness wise. Wayne, that's the kind of porn you get when you're filming on the beach. Bleeding nipples sounds like some kind of horrific medieval disease. Like, you know, King Louis the First died of bleeding nipples. It just starts and gets worse and worse over time until you just bleed out completely through the nipples. Sounds horrific, to be honest. The ultra marathoning prepper video. Yeah, I can definitely imagine that you will be doing a video talking about those things in exquisite detail. Bleeding nipples is the predecessor to the Z virus. Yes, whatever shoes you have, break them in. I am definitely in agreement with that. You definitely want to do all of your breaking in of your shoes and your feet before you end up needing to use them in the situation. Yeah, being on the run like that will do that, Hooples. That does not sound very pleasant at all. Which is a good thing to point out. I wonder if there have ever been studies on food absorption when traveling far distances consistently compared to traveling far distances with nice little digestion breaks where you get to lay down and relax a little bit so your food gets to actually get digested, because most people don't realize your body will almost digest not very much of your food while you're upright. You need to at least lay down and relax a little bit before all your stuff starts to squish around. I agree, Hooples. Inch, get home, or bug out bag. It is all sort of silly. Go as light as you can, travel as fast as you can, and have what you need when you get there. Really bad for you to eat on the go, never stop to digest. And you don't hear that talked about. I mean, ideally, bug outs are not going to take days on end. And I even did say earlier that if you can help it, try to eat on the go. That would ideally be interspersed with tactical rests. But my whole point there was not having to set up a whole camp and a fire and cook and do the whole ordeal, but to be on the go with what you do. People have rarely done extreme sports and then become preppers. It's true. A lot of preppers are just regular people who have not been in situations that apply to what they would be doing in bug out situations that they imagine. Even though probably a lot of bug out situations will not be like what they imagine them to probably be like. And I agree with you, Wayne. Those are all definitely good items. Cliff bars in particular are very good. I've often found that I can eat Cliff bars even whenever my stomach is somewhat upset and the prospect of other foods does not sound very good. Hello, Creative. How you doing? They're really pretty good. This live stream brought to you by Cliff Bars. Say hi to CR from you, Hooples. Creative. Hooples says hi to you. Yeah, snowshoes. People don't appreciate. Snowshoes do not make you go faster. And they are extremely laborious. You get tired. Oh, he said he was listening. Okay. Good call there, Hooples. I think that he's probably looking enough to be typing and stuff, at least at the moment. But yes, Hooples says hello, Creative, just in case you are only listening. But that is cool about the Bluetooth headsets. They're Creative. I have a pair somewhere. And they are extremely handy. In fact, I had gotten so used to using only Bluetooth headsets that whenever I got this wired headset once again, I forgot some of the intricacies of using wired headsets. Like you can't walk away from your phone while it's charging when your headset is plugged into it. Because I had gotten so used to being able to leave my phone charging in another room and walk around listening to YouTube or music without having to have my phone with me. I had actually gotten a piece of headphone jack stuck inside of this phone by using a very old auxiliary cable. The tip had actually gotten stuck inside this phone like just a day or so after I purchased this phone, making the headphone jack completely useless. Good night, Wayne. Thanks for dropping in. Good chatting with you. Anyways, finally, the other night, I was just messing with it out of random whim, and I finally got that little bit out. So, been able to use these new headphones that I got. But I definitely like the Bluetooth ones. Yep, thanks for dropping in, Wayne. I'll catch you pretty soon, I'm sure. Oh yeah, snowshoes are definitely great. I just think a lot of people think that they're just sort of a cheat code that let you just sort of fly across snow when, for one thing, they take quite a bit of practice to be able to travel efficiently with. But they are definitely better than not having snowshoes. I've got a couple of old pairs of snowshoes. Quite a few, actually. I don't know what state they're in. Everything on them looks fine, but you never know until you use them if it's all weakened. That is a good question, Hooples. I also plan to drive, but I think a lot of preppers don't. Well, if they have bikes, they don't have the physical fortitude to use them for very long. I haven't seen many prepper videos of riding bikes for long distances. Oh, thanks, Hooples. I think I got them too. Anyways, funny story about this Bluetooth headset. As you can tell, that's only half of a Bluetooth headset. The other earbud, was not working very well. And I was using it for so long with the other one breaking in and out of service, just sort of actually the static was so bad that it was actually making this one have static. I popped the other one off just to make it so that I would never use them again. And then a while later, I realized that this one might actually work better without the other one on it creating static. And it does. So I actually have this one single earbud piece here, and it still works without the other side. Works pretty well, actually. You can just have one ear in and go around doing your stuff. Yeah, Acer, a boat would actually sometimes be a really good option for travel. All right, CR. I'll say something out loud if anybody says anything to you. Sailing out to sea. Where would you be hiding at sea, Hooples? Prepper Bob. Hello, Prepper Bob. How you doing? Roaring 20s. Yeah, Acer, I actually want to get like some 20s outfits from the 1920s. Get some money together and go to a place that sells fancy clothes. haberdashery, if you will. The problem with Idaho, their hooples, is that there's no ocean access. Although that's not really a problem for me. I've lived with plenty of ocean access. Well, back to the topic at hand. What are some other terms that you see commonly misattributed or misunderstood between people in the prepping and survivalism and sustainable living communities? And I think that the way that Hooples is coming at it is a very good perspective. Any terms that we do use should be pretty immediately recognizable and understood by people outside the community. Basically, not just jargon that you need to have a background to understand. For instance, while bug out bag is pretty universally understood, I think, even among mainstream people, at least maybe not understood, but encountered. I don't think that that would be an alien term. Get home bag, 72-hour kit. Yes, I think that those are reasonable enough terms that most people should understand. That if you just say get home bag or 72-hour kit, I think your average Westerner would understand that you're talking about a bag that is meant for emergencies. I think for the bug out bag, the most applicable term would be a refugee kit or 72-hour kit or 1 week emergency bag or something like that. It doesn't need to be catchy to be something that conveys an idea. You can even make entire YouTube videos just calling it your 1 week emergency bag and never use the term bug out bag. But aside from just that, there are a lot of terms that are used in the community online that almost just through the use of that word, you incite confusion and miscommunication in your audience. If I say SHTF, I can pretty much be guaranteed that some people will be thinking of a civil war, and some people will be thinking of a zombie virus, and some people will be thinking of some vague and undefined situation where they can't really say what the problem is that is causing all of this, but they're in their house and they hear gunfighting outside at all times, and they know that just going outside would be dangerous. It just seems like there's such a wide and almost vague understanding of what an SHTF would be. And it is to the point where I try to avoid some of those terms when having serious conversation about things, because I know that if I just say SHTF, I'm just going to be bringing to mind so many different things in the minds of different people that it almost derails the conversation that I'm trying to have. I think we all are guilty, Hooples, but I know that you at least try to dissect the logic that's behind a lot of this stuff rather than contribute to murkying the waters. For me, a lot of what it comes down to is just people who have unclear logic or thinking when it comes to this kind of thing. They sort of, like we were saying, regurgitate stuff without really analyzing it deeply. Economic collapse 2020. What's in the bag? Hey, Joe. How you doing? That's an interesting concept, Hooples. I'm actually going to write that down. And if any of you listening want to hop on this right away, all right. If you could fill a backpack with things to help yourself in an economic collapse, what would it be? And I would actually like this to be a video if you guys want to make video responses. Don't have to, but I will probably make a video about this because Hoople's cat brings up a really good point. If you could fill a standard size backpack with gold or with something else for an economic collapse, free of cost. It doesn't, I mean, if you were to fill this thing with solid coin gold, it'd be millions of dollars. But if it was not a matter of money, not even necessarily a matter of weight, let's say you can have it upon your arrival at your bug out destination, on top of all the stuff that you would normally carry. So your bug out bag, whatever you want to take with you. And when you get there, you have waiting for you this bag of gold. Well, yeah, you can't carry it. But let's imagine that you could have that, or toilet paper, or anything. Except for maybe like a backpack size fusion reactor. That would be a little bit silly. But I would argue that a backpack of gold would be completely useless for quite a while in an economic collapse. So yes, I would say that a backpack of gold is not what you would want. But I am curious what people would actually gift themselves if they could actually just sort of have a little care package dropped to them 1 week into the economic collapse. What do they think would actually be the most valuable thing? Because this is a little bit different than how should you prepare for an economic collapse. This is foregoing some of the rules that usually would apply to that situation. All right, Joe. I appreciate the sentiment there, Joe Info, but it doesn't work just like toilet paper. Toilet paper works much better as toilet paper than paper money does. I've never actually tried to use paper money to wipe with, but I'm actually willing to believe that Charmin is better. If I was president, I would change that. If I was president, our dollars would actually double as toilet paper very well. Just in case the economy ever collapsed, you could still appreciate the dollars as toilet paper. Your country would still be serving you even after the economic collapse. Ooh, and then you could put seeds for food into the dollars so that after you wipe yourself with them and throw them on the ground, they'll grow into food later. I think we're getting somewhere here. Oh, come on. 1, 2, 3, 4 epsilon. That doesn't sound like it would taste good at all. Smoking weed with dollars. Hooples, in the SHTF, toilet paper is not about clinging on to pre-collapse normals, but keeping my pre-bowel movement food from clinging on to me. Hooples, if your plastic money in Canada was made out of rice plastic, then it'd be just fine. All right, Prepper Bob, you have a good one. Good luck at work. Okay, moving on from single-use toilet paper is fair enough. John Marston. Personally, I like the personal squirt bottle idea better. I don't have any in here. But if you just get like a little dollar squirt bottle from Walmart, it's like a little personal portable bidet. Carry baby wipes. Well, Epsilon, we're also talking about for a long-term situation. For instance, a year's worth of baby wipes for a family of people would be a considerable amount of baby wipes. I mean, that would be like a pallet of baby wipes at least. Then you have to ask yourself where you're putting those baby wipes after they're all being used. Because then you have like a pallet's worth of used baby wipes. Well, not necessarily just out camping. We're talking about camping, but we also talk about situations where, for instance, if there was a Great Depression again, you might not be able to go to the store and buy toilet paper for a year. But there are a couple situations where you might be camping for a year. But the reality is most people would probably die if they tried to do that. Yeah, a pressure wash CR is exactly the situation. I agree. High Desert Pioneer, are you saying that the economic collapse is today? Oh, yep, right there on the news. Economic collapse occurs. Is that a hypothetical epsilon? Like, could a person do that? Because people are definitely capable of it. I have never tried to do such a thing myself as make my own bow and arrow for survival. Um, I would be far more likely to try to create a trap or fish for food. But beyond that, I'd actually probably just dig out some grubs and eat them. They're far more abundant than almost any other food source in the woods. But if you do know what you're doing, um, between small game and especially plants, you can produce enough food to at least not starve over a short period of time. But it really depends on your area. Most areas can't provide you enough food to not starve over the course of even a week. Yeah, CR, but even then, if you're talking, I mean, if you flint knapping and bone working are definitely ways that you can produce those things, but the time span that you're using is the time span that you're starving to death in. If you're actually in a survival situation in the woods, if you sit down and spend 6 hours making a single arrow by flint knapping or bone work, and then go lose that arrow immediately without getting any food, you starve to death because the next day is not enough time to both collect enough food and do all the other things that you need to do. If I could take only one book camping, like, do you mean take a book camping, or if I could take just one book to help with camping skills? Then that would be this book, the one that CR was just mentioning. Ooh, what's this? Any other goodies? This is a wax paper survival guide with color images of a lot of valuable stuff, including edible foods and dangerous animals. If you have one book to help you with camping, then it's that one. If you have only one book and you're going camping and you just want something to read, I would say that Stephen King's Cell is a pretty good book that is underappreciated. Oh. Or The Eye of the World out of the Wheel of Time series by Robert Jordan. Epsilon, how long do I think the average person could survive in the wild by themselves? Is the Wheel of Time worth reading? I would say the Wheel of Time is worth reading at least 3 times. But if you don't want to do it for yourself, then you can check out my series where I read it as an audiobook, which I was actually just about to say I'm going to try to be continuing here in the next little while. But it is one of my favorite works of literature. But yeah, give me a second. Anyway, to answer your question, if we're talking about the average person, like just the average American, I would say, depending on the conditions, less than a week. Just because Most people are dehydrated already. Most people are malnourished. Pardon me. Are malnourished already. Most people are on the verge of scurvy already. And so you take them off of having any kind of regular food coming into them, and you add into that an increased physical exertion, exposure to elements, because exposure is one of the fastest killers. People often peg it to starvation, but it's not. You can die overnight in the rain, let alone the snow or sleet or hail. For the majority of people, their physical condition is going to decay overnight, the very first night that they're left out in the elements without something to sleep inside of. And from that point on, it's a positive feedback loop. So I would actually say that the majority of the average people, because they have no skills, because they're in already a susceptible state, less than a week. If they actually manage to find a source of water that doesn't make them sick within the first day, because a lot of water sources, depending on what is going to get in you, if it's not a fast-acting virus, a lot of digestive tract stuff actually takes quite a while to really build up enough to affect you if you're going to get found and rescued. So I don't necessarily say this, but some emergency survival information outlets do say you're better off drinking susceptible water than simply going without and forcing yourself into dehydration. But if you find, let's say that you find a source of clean water next to an abundant source of edibles, like you're just walking through rabbits. You can just kick a rabbit and roast it. And you're right next to a mountain spring. Yeah, maybe your average person could do just fine. But a lot of people, they are in a particularly susceptible state. Paddle out to the middle of the lake and drink the water a foot under the surface. Yeah, I mean, that'd probably be pretty. Actually, that would probably be the water would probably be sterilized just by the solar action. Yeah, you bet. I hope you enjoy it. They're definitely very good books, and there's a lot of it. I actually really need to get on it because I'll be doing that reading for years to come if society doesn't collapse and the internet doesn't go away. Yeah, that's pretty interesting, actually, Hooples. I've never thought that the sun actually probably sterilizes a good chunk of the microbiota on top of a lake. Yeah, okay, that depends, Epsilon. Sometimes I have hoped for a Walking Dead style apocalypse because, in all honesty, short of just absolute governmental failure, that should never, ever become as deadly as it was. Even if the government just absolutely failed, most people should be able to outrun zombies. But in such a situation, yes, I would like to think that I would find myself being quite fit for that situation, if you will. But under any actual logical scrutiny, there's nothing pleasant about it, and it's not something anybody should want. No reasonable person should want anything besides society to continue the way that it is and to find ways to improve and get rid of our problems, which, I mean, we're on a pretty good track. I agree, Epsilon. There's a strong nihilistic trait to a lot of people nowadays. A lot of people will sort of casually and jokingly say, I wish that there would be another plague, or I wish we'd have an apocalypse, or I wish the system would collapse and we could start over. But that is ignoring the fact that they will almost certainly be one of the people that dies. And if they do survive, their quality of life will be cut in half if they're lucky. It will probably be a fraction of what it is today. Well, I mean, you really would have to define that, Epsilon. If you look at what life was like before agriculture or before cities, even cities like London as it originally was, or Rome in its early days. And let's be clear, early London and early Rome were miserable places to live. I would argue that modern society has solved more problems than it's caused. I think that it's largely through a sort of objective, almost literary sense that we say that modern society has made it worse. The fact that we can brush our teeth, the fact that most of us have siblings, that we know all of our siblings, the fact that you don't have, most people used to, half of their siblings died before they reached adulthood. That was just a reality of life through almost all of human history. The fact that most of us have siblings that all of whom live to adulthood is a part of the modern world, or ourselves. Even then, though, Hooples, as hunter gatherers in small tribes in unruined Kenya, I mean, as far as we know, their main response for most medical things was trepanning, just tapping holes in people's brains. I don't know. I mean, there might have been some situations in which being a hunter gatherer was really nice. But for many people, it was a matter of living with very basic childhood deformities or injuries for the rest of their life. They had no understanding of germ theory. They had no understanding of human anatomy. Some cultures had some grasp of certain homeopathic things that would alleviate pain or deal with some things, but it's sort of a fantasy to think that the witch doctor could just keep you in peak health. Most people had some kind of misery causing injury or deformity or something that they were dealing with over the course of their life. Death was common. Comfort was almost unheard of for most of human history. I don't know. Agriculture made us sicker. You think so? See, Hoops, I don't necessarily agree with that, and I almost think that you're being facetious. I think that it does make us happier. I think that people are, I mean, fully capable of being just as happy as they were back then, but even more so because of their ability to have children that don't die in infancy and the ability to not. Good night, HTP. Um, I don't know. I just think that there was less choice, less comfort. I think that people were generally miserable and in pain and not able to do much about their circumstances. They're usually subjected by people. I mean, women's rights were never a thing. Um, I mean, I get where you're coming from, Hooples, with the existential question of what are we just happy because we tell ourselves we're happier, or could a person have been happier with less living in a tent in the pure primal nature of humanity? But I'll be honest, I think that a lot of that is fantasy. Um, there's a reason that people aren't doing that. I mean, if that was a source of happiness, then people would be finding it nowadays. And um, it for the same reason that it also always comes back to some kind of basic, sustainable modern homesteading lifestyle. I mean, I have before. If anybody has ever been capable of doing that kind of thing on their own, I have in the past thought that I am capable of walking into the woods and, yes, living like the noble savage. Um, I can get everything I need because that's how my ancestors did. But I was just thinking about this the other day. Um, the only reason that humanity has survived to the point that we have today is because we reproduce faster than we died. That is the only reason. We have always been hunted by other things. We have always been killed off by disease and injury and just our own genetic fallibility. We are a pretty weak species, and the only reason that we have gotten to where we did today is because we managed to use our brains and our physical endurance to make it to the point where we were an agricultural species. See, I would disagree with that, though, Epsilon, because humans weren't built to be anything. We evolved out of the roots of being hunter gatherers. But I would argue that we existed for millions of years as more or less that, and for definitely hundreds of thousands of years as hunter gatherers. And then as soon as we developed agriculture, we skyrocketed in our potential, which tells me that we have our best potential as an agricultural city dwelling species, and we simply have evolved from hunter gatherers. But if you look at the death rate and the disease rate and most factors that we determine quality of life from, it has only gotten better. Oh, okay. Well, the juice clearly came from an alternate reality where things were much cooler. The 3 hour for shelter rule. Yeah, I don't really want to step outside naked, but I have thought about doing a polar bear swim here soon. I mean, to be fair, Epsilon, we do have nukes that can wipe us out, but for the majority of humanity's history, all it took was a big volcano to wipe out most of humanity. There have been a couple times in human history where a volcano like Tambora have literally killed all but just a few thousand of humans. And it would, Hooples, but my point is that nukes haven't really changed that. Humanity can be brought back to a handful of tribes by quite a few things. And I agree, Epsilon, but I would definitely say that for the same reason that most people today are not going to be hunter gatherers in Africa, quality of life is subjectively and objectively and arbitrarily better with technology and with modern conveniences. People are definitely not happy with how things are going, and I think that that's a matter of not adapting and calibrating to our new existence properly. But I think that it's throwing the baby out with the dishwater to want to get rid of toothbrushes and toilet paper along with everything else and just go back to eating half-cooked meat over a fire. Even if it is better, the sad truth is it is impossible for humanity to ever get back to that existence again without, well, I don't know. I would almost argue that it's impossible for us to ever get back there. There's a high likelihood that we would go extinct before properly readapting the skills that we evolved in the first place. Literally, a lot of that oral knowledge, that oral tradition that was passed down, has been with humanity since we evolved the original skills in the first place. We have not actually separated ourselves from that ancestral evolutionary knowledge as a species until what we've done these days. So I would argue that there is no way for us to ever go back to living off of the land, having all the skills and all the knowledge that we need to keep ourselves healthy and prime. And I would also argue that the Earth might not support that anymore, at least not for quite a while. And there's a very fair chance that we would lose enough of our genetic diversity that we would drop down below 1,000 people and possibly go extinct if we were ever actually forced to return to tribal hunter-gatherer society. The juice. On a serious note, how do I feel about climate control? How can we stop supervolcanoes? Lost it. Supervolcanoes, asteroids, fires, etc. We can't, so what's with the fuss over it? We can't stop an asteroid from destroying North America alone is riddled with asteroid craters, a huge one in Mexico and Ohio. Well, no, we can't stop any of that. And very likely, if we tried to, we'd only make things worse. So the best that a person can do is do what they can to prepare themselves best for most situations. Speaking of the Bible, Hooples, I saw you drop into a live stream earlier and run out of there like a bat out of hell. I thought that was pretty funny. Someone said hi to you, and I was like, I'm sorry, but he's gone already. He's gone. Now, Juice, your wording there is really interesting because what you're saying is actually climate control, which I don't know if you're just like accidentally misappropriating the term for like the car's air control knobs. But in my mind, climate control is actually things like HARP or chemtrails or things like that. But I think you're referring to climate change. Um, and I believe that climate change is a real thing. If you want to talk about anthropogenic global warming or man-made climate change, then I would like to make that very specific because I believe that the climate changes. I mean, it's a scientific fact that the climate changes. I do. I appreciate the preaching, but I also I don't even know where to start. I often disagree with people's interpretation, if you will. I was just watching that video, Hooples, with the Reverend Christie, where you were talking about woman-made climate change, and you convinced me that I'm going to start speaking out against woman-made climate change. I think it's actually been shown that proportionately, a woman is likely to have a worse carbon footprint than a man. Particularly because men are more involved in agricultural work, which offsets their footprint because they're producing trees and things like that, whereas there are less women working in the tree industry. Thanks, Joe Info. Appreciate you dropping in. You have a good night. Women bleed and live longer and have more chronic disease. Well, yeah, and just things. I'm pretty sure makeup is probably pretty costly for the environment. I'm pretty sure bras are like a uniquely woman thing. Those probably are bad for the environment. I'm sure we could write a few articles about that. And feminine hygiene products. Yeah, I'm sure that there's something about their manufacture that's not good for the environment. Woman-made climate change. Thanks, Joe. Have a good night and a happy new year. See, the juice knows what he's talking about there, Hooples. You've just decided to subjugate a different form of life to suffering with your vegan ways. Yeah, ban women. We definitely need to ban women. I'm going to go back and change this live stream's name to the Ban Women live stream. I don't think there's even been a female in here so far. Just shows how hateful they are, discriminating against us like that. They're probably out there destroying the environment, too busy to come on YouTube. The Toyota Prius kills the driver to reduce the yeah. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate that. All right, guys, we drinking cider or bourbon? Wait, I thought you guys. What car did you just purchase? I thought you just did purchase vehicle. Water. I got water. And what? Enroys? Embryos. Yeah, I was actually going to respond to Acer with that. We'll just create babies using our own genetic material and then implant them. I think you can. I think that there's a theory that you can grow a baby on the outside of the intestines, like it's a placenta. I'm pretty sure they can do it without a human egg by now, can't they? You just need the genetic material, right? Yeah, I was pretty sure that you could just get enough genetic material from one type of whatever reproductive cell from sperms. Hello there. Yeah, I was actually gonna go back and watch Clone Wars. I never watched that stuff. Yeah, I definitely I've been on a Star Wars kick. Yeah, every time someone talks about how a law won't pass the Senate, that's what I hear. I don't know, Hooples. I just did. I guess we'll see what happens. I don't watch much TV, though. I actually haven't been watching much TV in quite a while. But I have always liked The Walking Dead, at least the early Walking Dead. No, it's Rick that's always yelling for Carl. Carl! I might have actually just earned a copyright strike by yelling for Carl. Yeah. Carl, Lori, Coral. I think Shane needed to get killed. I think Rick should have popped Shane like way earlier. Get in the house. Yeah, I agree, Hoobles. Actually, okay. There are two reasons why I like The Walking Dead. One is because, at least for me, it's capable of setting the mental atmosphere. If I just sort of get into it, I can actually put my mind frame into that post-apocalyptic setting, and I appreciate that because a lot of them are just too, I don't know. No, not that one. But I can get into the atmosphere with The Walking Dead. The second reason being that it gives you ideas for what not to do, because almost throughout the entire show, you're noticing things that you would do differently to improve on your situation there. But not necessarily because it's just full of great ideas. But yes, actually, remember what I said earlier, Epsilon. I have sometimes wished for a zombie apocalypse like The Walking Dead because you can pretty much just speed walk away from them and be just fine. And even if you can't speed walk away from them, you should pretty much be able to back walk and just slowly swing and hit them as they come at you. But yes, realistically, the army would have cleared them all unless they really just fumbled it so poorly, like in the book version of World War Z, where the zombies are even slower, but the army fails to realize that they need to use headshots and that explosives are useless, particularly against the World War Z ones. And so they basically just all die because they did not outfit themselves properly. Exactly, Hooples. That's one of the main reasons why a zombie apocalypse is nice, is because it's this situation where suddenly all the people are gone, but they leave pretty much everything intact in such a short time frame that very few things have actually spoiled or gone bad. But you and a few other people who are well suited for surviving in that environment are left with only a threat, which, while particularly daunting, is actually somewhat simple to deal with at the end of the day. I mean, it's far easier than an unknown alien threat that is far technologically advanced and operates using different criteria than you expect. Oh yes, and repopulate the Earth and be a local lord, basically. So the Juice likes Shane because he brought promiscuous sex to The Walking Dead. I would probably be a little too busy in the zombie apocalypse to be spending too much time making the beast with two backs. I mean, it might come up, but probably I'll be a little busy. But no, I disliked Shane, and I thought he was bad for the group. Even if you want to say, I mean, I don't even agree with the argument that he would have been better if Rick was out of the picture. He's portrayed as being a poor leader and making rash decisions and bad decisions. Um, I just think, personally, what the whole story arc tells me is if you have someone like that, just take care of them immediately rather than giving them the chance to mess things up. Then you would have your problem solved, Epsilon. Oh no, I really hope that Zombieland 2 would be good, but I also realize that it might just be a shameless money grab. But I will have to see it. Let's be honest, Epsilon. There's 7 billion people in the world, and I think that about half of a percentage of that is about 50 million people. And I say that there are at least that many women in this world that you simply would not want to provide services to. So maybe you would be being done a service. I have not seen Rise of Skywalker. I have not been impressed with the sequels. And I hear that it is, while a cinematic movie, just as bad, if not worse, than the others. Yeah, I did like The Force Awakens and Rogue One and Solo. And I like the prequels more than most people are willing to admit that they do. Probably because they were sort of the time era that I grew up with, but even looking back at them, I can appreciate them as part of the at least Lucas series, but I just can't get on with a lot of the newer stuff. I wish it had been done differently. Even some of the storyline, the Star Wars stories. Oh, I'm sure you would think so, Hooples. But no, in all fairness, it does actually look good. I will probably be seeing if Prepper's daughter wants to do an original Star Wars series watch through with me because she has never watched it in such a way that she can appreciate it. So could be fun to do give someone their real first original Star Wars experience because those are classics of cinema. Yeah, Hooples. I mean, obviously, I wasn't there for the original release, but did I just have a connection hiccup there? I was just saying I wasn't there for the original release, but I can appreciate how amazing that original opening crawl was, especially the way that movies have been done before that. Um, definitely, definitely a moment. I imagine if it was something that you hadn't experienced before. Video it, be viral. Yes, I'm sure. I don't know why my chat is not connecting. Hmm, that's weird. Well, thanks for dropping in, CR. See you're leaving, but thanks for dropping in, and we'll see you later. Have you a good night and a happy New Year. Yeah, Hooples. I imagine that it was probably an experience that has not been replicated since. Hey, Jim Beer. Sometimes, but not too much. I don't know why my chat will not connect here. There it is. Han did shoot first. That much is clear. Yeah, my internet and or chat are being sort of weird. Yeah, pretty much Hoople's job just entails live streaming, being on people's live streams while he's working. All right, cool, Acer. I just did a hiccup for a second, and then my chat said unable to connect to chat. So I thought I lost you guys for a second, but apparently just the chat on my host window is down. So I just have to be in through a guest window. How old am I? I am around 30, about to change. Very fun, Hooples. How often do I read? Oh, like you mean doing the readings? Thanks, Hooples. Or do you just mean like reading of my own accord? Because I don't read very much unless I'm doing my readings for the channel. Well, that's actually not true. Whenever I started doing the readings, I read pretty far ahead in one of the books. Yeah, thanks, Hooples. I'm not too worried about that kind of thing, but I do appreciate you staying on top of it. But I do watch a lot of educational YouTube, if you will, a lot of science journals channels and things like that to keep the learning going. But as everybody always says, I don't read as much as I would like to, and I have intentions to read more in the future. Got a stack of books too. Yeah, Hoople. Sometimes that's the only real way to do it is to have a stack of books on the go. Nope, I've never had anybody say that. I do not know who that is. Hmm. Yeah, I guess I can see the resemblance. Oh, Epic Rap Battle. Is that where he's from? Oh my gosh, he is from that, isn't he? That's funny. I've only ever seen him in costume. That's funny. I think Hooples is right. I definitely look like Posh Spice. I don't even know what that person looks like. I think Posh Spice looks like me. That's a little eerie. I used to get told I looked like Bradley Cooper. That was quite a while back. That might not be true. Yeah, Victoria Beckham. I saw a picture of her. She definitely has striking features, doesn't she? The question is, can she bend it like Beckham? Well, we don't have to, Hoobles. That's not necessarily what I'm getting at. Um, although I would like to see a trend towards that, towards getting away from jargon and catchy words and just using regular, yeah, like you said, normal words and terms like an emergency kit, a 72-hour kit, rather than a bug out bag, because a 72-hour kit is a 72-hour kit, whatever you're going to be doing with it. If you're going to bug out with it, then that's very nice, but I don't know why you need to tell me that. It's a 72-hour kit. So, yeah, I mean, normalizing things, making them not so, uh, preppery, jargony. Yeah, I like soccer. I'm not much of a spectator sport person, if you will, but I appreciate them all for their own reasons. Oh yeah, thank you, Hooples. I need to go back and read the other two. I read the first one, the article by that gal about being 31, which gave me a little bit of existential dread. My birthday's here in 2 months, month and a half, so that'll be fun. But yeah, I need to go back and check the other two links. Oh, is it? Okay, I'll check out the comment sections. And yes, I imagine that they will all be you, just in different guises. Back to Epsilon's question. I know that you were asking me because I referenced the movie Bend It Like Beckham, which is a soccer movie. Um, but when it comes to sports, I do like the fighting sports a little bit more, like wrestling or boxing and stuff like that. But yeah, I definitely Hooples have a couple different ideas on how to come at the millennial video or series, maybe. One thing that I'm curious for is whether or not everybody who likes to bash on millennials has the feel free to clip you and attack boomers. I fully anticipate that if I do a video where I bash on boomers, I'll get a bunch of boomers in the comment section being butthurt over it, despite the fact that they spend the rest of the time talking about how millennials are the ones who are oversensitive and effeminate and get butthurt too easily over stuff. But we'll see. But no, I have no desire to call anybody individually out. And among preppers who are older than myself, I would say that you definitely have a very objective perspective about it. There are a lot out there who bash millennials while ignoring their own shortcomings, but I don't necessarily see you as one of them. Have to teaching them. I mean, I'm sure that you see a lot of bad stuff, and I'm definitely not one to say that our generation's the best. And I definitely have my own judgment, but at least it's from firsthand experience for so many people who bash millennials online, especially what I see in live streams and so on here. It's just become a meme at this point. It's just, it's almost like when people run out of things to say, someone's just gonna be like, yeah, how about the millennials that don't know anything? And it's good for a few yucks, and everybody sort of goes around and throws in their 2 cents. But, you know, it's just, like I said, it's just a meme at this point. Just regurgitation of something that's overplayed, I think. But it's distasteful given that men saying we need a reset. You know, it's how many of these people have kids who are millennials or know millennials who they actually don't have a problem with? And how many of them are going to end up relying on millennials in grid down situations? I mean, like it or not, then the millennials and Gen Zers are going to be the source of the physical labor. And heaven forbid that they don't appreciate being called young and stupid at the same time, that they're supposed to be doing all the food production for you. Might have a little bit of a workers' revolt on your hands. But yes, Hooples, that is one of the most jarring things in the prepping community that I would like to call out, is fat beer drinking people in their man shed saying we need a reset. I'd like to see them doing push-ups while saying those same things. I'd like to see them boycotting companies or moving their companies from states that don't have good political policies into states that do. But so many of them are only there to have their voice heard when there's virtue signaling to be done. Yeah. But yeah, basically for tonight's topic, I just would like to see a little bit more clear thinking in our community. I think that it's not even necessarily the terminology itself so much as just lazy thinking that lets people um, just sort of group whole ideas into the same category, or not even really look at the situations that they're fantasizing about closely enough to really form a clear idea of what it's going to be like and what they need to do to prepare for it. Yeah, that'd be cool, Hooples. Maybe I'll go ahead and throw out a video. I got a couple things I need to make note of here. Where to put my notebook? Couple of videos that we could do some little VRs too and get a couple other people doing videos on. Inch is insane video. All right. Yeah, I think that it would be worth having a few people making videos about why we need to question the commonly accepted narrative of bug out bags and inch bags and SHTF and what we think of those things. Like the idea of making specific bags and then using them. Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. Particularly the get home bag. There seems to be a lot of confusion even just on the get home bag. The get home bag is either just a very light day bag that's going to provide you with your next meal because you're not going to be able to stop at McDonald's, and maybe a little bit of coffee because you're not going to be able to stop at Starbucks, and maybe an extra pair of socks in case your socks are already wet and all of a sudden you're probably going to need to go walk a little extra. But a lot of the time, people's get home bag sort of shies into a little bit of a bug out bag or 72-hour trek bag without really covering all the bases. I've heard people say that my get home bag only needs to get me 20 miles, which I can do in a day. So I'd only need this much. But to me, if I'm covering 20 miles and it's during a chaotic collapse type situation involving violence, which I don't necessarily expect, but these people generally do. 20 miles is a very far distance to cover while dealing with potential violence. And it's pretty good chance that you might need to hunker in place for a day or so. And so when people say that their get home bag is going to get them 20 miles of distance in a day and that they don't need anything more than just very light things, to me, that is a bug out bag. Your home is a bug out away. But I agree with Hooples. Unless you're in a high crime area, the sudden violence just popping up all around you, people just killing each other in the streets because an EMP happened, I think that is overdone. I think there are certain circumstances where it is possible that some people, probably preppers, are going to grab their guns and go cause some pretty ugly situations. I actually have mentioned before, I do want to do this video where most of the people killing each other in the immediate aftermath of a collapse are just going to be preppers killing each other. They might even be preppers who have encountered each other on YouTube without realizing it, going to the store because they're switched on. They're switched on, and they realize the situation for what it was. And you get two gung-ho preppers with all of their loadout going and hitting Costco, and they're the only ones there, and they turn the corner and get into a gunfight because all they see is a potential threat. So yeah, I actually think that there's a pretty decent chance that just by virtue of being the only two people out there with all their guns and all that stuff. Um, Preppers might just, maybe not just towards each other, but you put yourself in that situation by being there and being that guy. But aside from that, I really don't think, for the most part, that there are going to be a lot of people going out and causing violence immediately afterwards. It is not going to be just like the opening scene of Dawn of the Dead, where you step out your front door and there's just explosions and pillars of smoke and sirens and screaming and gunshots in pretty much every direction. Yeah, I agree, Hooples. If the police are running around in a city that is dealing with a rapidly occurring economic collapse or something like that, they're probably pretty likely to enter confrontations with random people who look like a paramilitary person than just to ignore them and carry on like it's all live and let live. And yeah, Jim Beer, most will be dazed and confused for 48 hours minimum. I agree. For large part, if, let's say, the television stop, if all of the communications network drops, a lot of people will be dazed and confused, and not in the groovy kind of way. They'll be not proactive in any way. They'll not be doing much aside from maybe going to nearby establishments and trying to figure out some kind of consensus on what's going on. But it largely will not be an environment where people are going to be making quick and concise action. And if you live in an area where there are gangs that are just immediately going to jump on the situation, then that's not a good place to be. But yeah, I do believe that in a sudden grid collapse situation where there's not any immediate threat for most people, but where there's just a general understanding that something important has come to a grinding halt, like the communications network or the electric grid or food distribution, but not communication. I think that last one would probably be the most dangerous. If everybody has their phones, everybody has the internet, but just there's no food moving, which could happen. There could just be a sudden freeze on food transportation for a couple different reasons. That one would be the one that would be most likely to see people making crazy actions to go grab food. But I think it's in a situation where the flow of information stops, which is really likely compared to a lot of other things. You would definitely see just a complete freeze in a lot of people that would almost delay the chaos in a lot of places. Anyways, I think 2.5 hours is about approaching time to wrap it up. Unless anybody else has anything particularly interesting to carry on the chat with. Yeah, Hooples, and I think it definitely depends on the area. My area is very suburban / rural, and I think that things would be much calmer here than in a place with a high population density, especially a high vertical population density. Tighter streets and a lot more people on them would be a lot more tense than a lot of suburban environments with a communication breakdown. And I definitely agree that radio breakdown would exacerbate things a lot more than just a general internet breakdown. If there was a total information freeze, it'd be a pretty ugly situation. But yeah, not roaming violence. I don't know. Definitely something that deserves a bit more intelligent analysis is chaos and violence following multiple different situations. Yeah, blackout in 2003, block parties for 3 days. Yeah, I think that that's how a few different situations would be. I think it'd be pretty interesting to look at a collapse where people see it as an opportunity to just party for 3 days, but it never comes back. And so what you have is an economic collapse where for a while everybody was just sort of seeing it as a vacation, and then it turned into something much more ugly. Very interesting. Yeah, I think you're right, Hooples. I think that that's something like that is a pretty fair approximation. In fact, some of the more rational preppers, for instance, I know that Steve at Corsair Trainers and his EMP tabletop series, one of his first responses to an EMP event would be to roll out the barbecue into the front yard and bring out all the alcohol that he's got in the house and have a barbecue and get his neighbors drunk and have everybody just sort of relax and try to have a good time no matter how serious the situation seems. If no one's dying in your neighborhood, you might as well cook off the perishables and seem like everybody's best friend. So even if you know what's going on, even if you as a prepper understand the severity of the situation, starting it all off with a little bit of something besides freaking out would actually maybe be a good idea. But I have wondered if that would be the best use of time, as Jim Beer points out. Maybe canning everything would be a better response, but it is an interesting question. Anyways, I appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you joining the chat. It's been very interesting. Yeah, I think you're probably right, Hooples. We were gonna go and re-examine that. I still have that in my my video list. Is the ugly reality of non-ideal EMP. Very good, Hooples. Can up the meat and then go drive out to the woods and stay in a cabin. All right. Well, thanks for joining, guys. Thanks for being here for the chat. It's been a very good and thought-provoking chat here tonight. Hope you're all doing well. Hope you all have a good night. You have a good rest of your shift there at work, Hooples. Definitely appreciate anybody who rewatched to this point. That's definitely a feat for watching live stream through after not being there. But thank you, everybody who is here. Appreciate you being here to chat and watch and everything. Hope you're all doing well, and I hope you all have a productive and successful new year and a new decade. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up now. So hope you're all doing well. Everybody have a good night and stay safe out there.